After studying this module, you shall be able to learn the meaning of power, understand the distinction between power and leadership, describe the different sources of power, know the nature of different tactics of power, analyze the relationship between power and dependency, and identify the key attributes of positive power. Men have craved for power throughout the history. In fact, power has determined the very course of human history. As humans entered the civilized mode of life, the display of power has become a bit more subtle. It exists nevertheless in every sphere of human life. As for the case of organizations and other places of work, power has always been enjoyed and exerted by those at the top of the ladder. Only recently has this trend shown a change. As we moved into a more technologically advanced way of life, factors other than the mere position of an individual, such as knowledge, expertise, etc., have been acknowledged as the alternative determinants of power. Organizational output, success, culture, climate, etc., all are influenced by the way the power is acquired and exercised in the organizations. Therefore, power has been an important topic of study for organizational behaviorists. Definition and its meaning. The term power has been described as the degree of influence one individual can exert on the other based on a number of factors. Some of the popular definitions of this term are: according to Richard Nixon, power is the opportunity to build, to create, to indulge, to nudge history in a different direction. According to Salinsik and Pfeffer in 1989, power is simply the ability to get things done the way one wants them to be done. According to Max Weber, the probability that one actor within a social relationship will be in a position to carry out his own will despite resistance is power. Now coming to power versus leadership. Power is often understood as synonymous with leadership. Traditionally, it has been assumed that power comes with leadership. However, in some cases, it is power that leads to leadership. In any case, the two are intricately related. Power is usually drawn from an individual's position of authority, whereas leadership is better understood as a trait which is within an individual and is not drawn from his or her position. For example, history has seen such people who have been great leaders even in the absence of any formal positions to draw power from, such as Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. Difference between power and leadership. Firstly, power comes from the positions of authority. Leadership is an attribute that does not require power. Secondly, power is used as only a means of achieving goals, while leadership focuses more on goal achievement. Thirdly, power requires follower dependency. Leadership requires goal compatibility with the followers. Fourthly, power is used to gain lateral and upward influence, while leadership focuses influence downward. Fifth, power terrorizes and makes people follow commands out of fear, while leadership inspires and makes followers. Sixthly, power does not serve to promote innovation and creativity, while leadership fuels innovation and creativity. And lastly, power is not based on vision, while vision forms a very important part of leadership. Now coming to dependency and power. Dependency simply means the extent to which one individual depends on another individual in hope of meeting certain of his or her needs, which are directly or indirectly controlled by other individual. In other words, dependency has been described as B's relationship to A when A possesses something that B requires. Dependency has a direct relationship with power. B's dependency directly contributes to A's power. A number of factors determine the creation of dependency among individuals. The more the number of such factors is controlled by A, the greater the dependency of B on A. Alternatively, more is the power of A over B. Following is the discussion of some of these factors. First is scarcity. Scarcity has been identified as a factor important for creation of dependency. Whatever is scarce tends to be more desirable than something which is easily available. The value of a resource depends hugely on its availability or scarcity. Likewise, an individual possesses power by virtue of holding something considered as scarce. On the other hand, if something is easily obtainable or is present in abundance, possession of it would not serve as a source of power. The second is importance. Among other factors, importance or significance of a resource also serves as a determinant of power. Possession of a skill or resource which is highly significant for the attainment of organizational goals is directly related to the creation of dependency. If something is not important, it will not create dependency. Organizations tend to gauge an individual's worth in terms of his or her skills or capacities. If they resonate with the needs of the organization, they are considered important, and hence the individual possesses such skills can wield power on their basis. The third is substitutability. Substitutability refers to the possibility of finding an alternative to something so as to take its place while performing as well as it does. Any resource or skill which is not easily substitutable is going to hold more importance than one which can be easily replaced. In order to create dependency, a resource has to be non-substitutable. That is, nothing else should be able to take its place or perform its functions as well as it itself does. The more difficult it is to find a substitute to something, the more dependent the organization or an individual becomes, and the greater the power commanded by such a resource or the person possessing it. Now coming to the sources of power. Power as exercised in organizations originate from a number of sources. Sometimes it comes as a result of an individual's formal position in the organization, which provides him or her with the authority to wield power. On the other hand, power might also originate as a result of the control an individual has over a number of factors which hold valence for the others in the organization, such as rewards, promotion, as well as authority to penalize. One of the most notable studies on power was conducted by social psychologists John R.P. French and Bertram Raven in 1959. This study identified 5 different sources of power as discussed. These 5 types could be classified along 2 lines: A, based on formal power, and B, based on personal power. Based on formal power, it can be classified into 3, namely coercive power, reward power, and legitimate power. And based on personal power, it can be classified into 2, that is, expert power and referent power. Firstly, we will discuss about based on formal power. Formal power is drawn by an individual by virtue of his or her position in the organization, that is, the title an individual holds at the workplace. With position comes formal power. On this basis, following are the sources of power. First is legitimate power. Legitimate power is the power that comes from one's organizational role or position. For example, a boss can issue orders to his or her subordinates which they are expected to comply with. Such orders are met with ready compliance and obedience because they accept the legitimacy of the position, even if they personally don't like them. This type of power, however, can be unpredictable and unstable. An individual can lose legitimate power with the loss of his or her organizational title or position, since others were influenced by the position, not by the individual. Also, the legitimate power can only be exercised within the bounds of certain situations, limited to situations that others believe one has a right to control. Now coming to the second, that is coercive power. Coercive power is based on the use of unpleasant tactics and instilling fear in the minds of employees. An individual in a position of power may use threats of punishment, withdrawal of incentives, demotions, pay cuts, etc. in order to win their compliance. Use of coercion is central to coercive power. As a last resort, the manager sometimes needs to punish people. However, extensive use of coercive power is rarely appropriate in an organizational setting. This source of power is sometimes problematic and can be subjected to abuse. It can cause unhealthy behavior and dissatisfaction in the workplace because coercive power often works through fear and it forces people to do something that ordinarily they would not choose to do. The third is reward power. Reward power is the power based on the use of desirable outcomes in order to win compliance from employees. Those individuals in power positions who control the distribution and allocation of rewards within an organization tend to use this as a way of exercising power. Desirable rewards such as increase in pay, a perk, or an attractive job assignment tend to hold valence for employees. Reward power is the highest when the reward is scarce. However, reward power diminishes significantly when the valence for the reward goes down or the control over the distribution of rewards reduces. Also, as the rewards get used up or their desirability declines, rewards also lose their ability to induce power. Now, based on personal power, there is another way of understanding the source of power. When an individual does not hold any formal position of power in the organization but still wields power, it means the source of such a power is based on the individual's characteristics, either expertise or the respect and admiration of others. Following are the sources of power which originate from the individual. First is expert power. Expert power comes from knowledge and skill. When an individual has knowledge and skills that enable him or her to understand the situation at hand, take decisive steps based on expert knowledge, and generate unique ideas, it certainly places the individual in a spot of power. When people demonstrate expertise, it serves as a source of power, especially when such an expertise is indispensable for the attainment of organizational goals. Making one's skill set and expertise necessary for the organization is a good way to build and maintain power. The second is referent power. Referent power has its origins in the personal characteristics of an individual, such as the degree to which he or she is admired, respected, and identified with by the others in the organization. Referent power is often based on charisma, the ability to attract others, win their admiration, and hold them spellbound. Referent power comes from one person liking and respecting another, and strongly identifying with that person in some way. In a workplace, a person with charm often makes everyone feel good, so he or she tends to have a lot of influence. Referent power can be abused quite easily. Someone who is likable but lacks integrity and honesty may rise to power and use that power to hurt and alienate people as well as gain personal advantage. Now, coming to power tactics, extensive research has identified a number of tactics adopted by individuals in order to acquire and exert power. This section focuses on 9 such tactics. First is rational persuasion. Rational persuasion includes the use of facts, data, and logical arguments by an individual to try to convince others that his or her point of view is the best alternative. This is the most commonly applied influence tactic. Effective rational persuasion includes the presentation of factual information that is clear and specific, relevant and timely. Second is inspirational appeals. Inspirational appeals strive to obtain emotional commitment from the target individuals by tapping into their values, emotions, hopes and beliefs. This is done to gain support for a request or course of action. Effective inspirational appeals are authentic, personal, big thinking and enthusiastic. Third is consultation. Consultation refers to the strategy of involving the target individual's opinions in the process of decision making. It involves taking into account their points of view in order to increase their motivation and support. Consultation is the most effective in organizations and cultures with democratic decision making. The fourth is ingratiation. Ingratiation refers to the tactic wherein an individual uses different ways of making others feel good about themselves. Ingratiation includes any form of flattery, praise, or friendly behavior done either before or during the influence attempt. Research shows that ingratiation can affect the individuals. The fifth is personal appeals. Personal appeal refers to the technique of asking help based on an individual's expectation of loyalty or friendship from others. Personal appeals are most effective with people who know and like the individual asking for help. Sixth is exchange. Exchange refers to the technique involving a give and take relationship. When an individual complies with a request, he or she is rewarded with the benefits or favors. In other words, it is based on the principle of reciprocation in which someone does something for you and you do something for them in return. The seventh is coalition. Coalition tactics refer to a group of individuals working together toward a common goal to influence others. Common examples of coalitions within organizations are unions that may threaten to strike if their demands are not met. Another use of this tactic is seen when other people's help is sought in order to get the target individuals to comply, especially in the face of collective agreement from others. The eighth is pressure. Pressure refers to the use of warnings, threats, or repeated demands in order to get the target to comply to one's opinions. It is done by exerting undue influence on someone so as to get them to act in ways one desires and do what one wants. This often includes threats and frequent interactions until the target agrees. Research shows that managers with low referent power tend to use pressure tactics more frequently than those with higher referent power. Ninth is legitimacy. Legitimating tactics occur when the appeal is based on legitimate or power position. This tactic relies upon compliance with rules, laws, and regulations. A person seeking to exert power over others often makes use of his or her legitimate power, which is drawn from his or her formal position in the organization. If someone hides behind people's rightful authority to assert themselves, it can seem heavy-handed and without choice. People want to be convinced that the person is an authority and hence worth heeding to. These are some of the most popular tactics used by people in organizations in order to exert power over colleagues, subordinates, and even superiors. Coming to managing with positive power. English historian John Emerich Edward Delberg warned that power was inherently evil. He stated that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, in order to highlight the downside of power. History shows that possession of power has been devastating if unchecked. Therefore, it is extremely important that the use of power must be positive. It is important that a manager's use of power must not turn into something restraining and unethical, which is not unlikely. In order to become an effective and ethical manager, one should learn how to use power in a positive manner. Positive use of power involves learning how to manage power in ways that enable and empower the employees. Modifying Pfeffer 1992 somewhat, Clegg identifies that there are 7 steps to the effective use of power. They are ethical action, second is strategies and tactics, what is to be done. Third is personal power basis, what do you have. Fourth is polyphonic power basis, who has what resources. Fifth is establishing polyphony, who represents and wants what and why. Sixth is diagnosis, what are the patterns of dependence and interdependence. And last is goal specification, that is consultation with significant others. Making decisions in consultation with the direct stakeholders in the organization forms the central part of the positive use of power by the managers and leaders. It involves deciding in consultation with significant others what the organizational goals should be and what should be done to accomplish these goals. Identifying key individuals and allowing them to adequately voice their opinions and needs form the next step. Then on, taking into account resources possessed by different people and their use to the overall goals become important. After this, the leaders and managers should take ethical actions so as to make a positive use of power. Finally, coming to the summary of this module, power is the ability to influence the behavior of others in order to get them to do or behave as one desires, even in the face of resistance. Power is different from leadership, wherein it involves the use of formal position to exert influence, even without goal compatibility with the target individuals. Leadership, on the other hand, is an attribute not dependent on power and has goal compatibility with those over whom influence is exerted. Third, dependency is directly related to power. Scarcity, importance, and non-substitutability create dependence. Power sources based on formal power involve legitimate power, coercive power, and reward power. Power sources based on personal power involve expert and referent power. People make use of a number of power tactics in organizations such as rational persuasion, pressure, ingratiation, consultation, coalition, exchange, legitimacy, etc., to name a few. And lastly, power has its downside, that is, it is likely to be abused by those who possess it. Therefore, it becomes imperative for the managers to understand how to use power in a positive manner.